On paper, the Miami Hurricanes will have the best offense in the ACC.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, also co-host of Locked On ACC. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first or your second listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we are joined by our recruiting overlord, and I'll call him the transfer portal guru. I want to give him another title as well. Brian Smith is with us. Brian, how you doing?
That I've been doing charts and stuff on which teams I think are doing well and who's relying on it too much. It's a lot of fun, but transfer portal, man, it is complex.
Well, and hold on to one of those thoughts, because I want to ask you about something you said there. As every time Brian Smith joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Who do you think is relying on the transfer portal too much? And do you put Miami anywhere near that conversation?
I think they're in the flux, but here's the situation. If you've got a hole at a key spot, like defensive tackle, we've talked about for a couple of years, they needed to go out and try to get something in terms of size, and they've done that. If they didn't, I mean, they're in trouble. My point is you can't just automatically throw money at these kids with NIL and make it work, because then you can possibly tick off other guys. It's a very fine line, and it's not a Mario Cristobal problem. This is a 133 teams in college football's Power 5 or FBS problem. So who do you depend on too much? Miami's dinked and dunked here and there because their recruiting's been so good the last couple of years. They've gotten away from not having to do it much and just take certain players. But there are certain teams like Ole Miss, I think, went way too far in. Like, I think they're going to run their culture. And they took a few guys I'm not sure about. Ohio State, like, they went from not really using it very much to, like, they spent $30 million or something. I saw some crazy total. And I'm like, I don't know how that's going to work. And I know Ryan Day can coach, and I know they got players, but, like, that worries me. There's a handful of teams, and there's different ways to look at it. But Miami's just on the fringe because they tried to fill holes. They didn't just take guys to take guys. So there's a difference, but it's not perfect either. But this is the roster that Mario and his staff inherited. And it takes 3 to 4 years to build a true roster. There is no shortcut, although Miami fans have no patience and don't want to hear that. It's just the reality. So you got to do what you got to do.
And there's definitely been a makeover when it comes to Miami's offense. I mean, back in January, the huge addition at quarterback was Cam Ward. Then just over the past few days, Brian, and the last time you came on the show late last week, we were heading into a big weekend of visits, and we spoke about hypotheticals like, what if Miami can land Damien Martinez? What if Miami can land Sam Brown? They've done both of those things. And you look at these positions, and of course, Brown is not the only very good receiver on Miami's roster. Xavier Restrepo was 1,000+ yard guy last year. Jacolby George was nearly a 900-yard receiver last year. Sam Brown, 815 yards last season at Houston. In the case of the quarterback now, when it comes to statistics, which I know don't mean everything, especially when you play in a different conference, but Cam Ward last year at Washington State threw for more yards, not only than any quarterback currently in the ACC heading into next year, but actually threw for more yards than any quarterback in the ACC last year. That includes Drake May, who was just a high first-round pick, threw for about 100 less yards than Cam Ward did last year. Miami is the only team in the ACC that has 3 wide receivers, 3 on their roster, 3 pass catchers, I should say, because you can include tight ends as well, just in general. 3 pass catchers to have at least 500 receiving yards last year on the same roster. Miami's got 3 who had at least 800 receiving yards last year. Damien Martinez gives you 1,000-yard plus back from a season ago. So, and this is, I know people could say, oh, Donno's a homer or whatever, but I'm not being a homer when I say this. On paper, Miami has the best offense in the ACC.
I don't think it's really all that close when you look at firepower. The question is always, continuity, health. And then, it sounds like Cam has done a really good job of acclimating to the offense, getting along with Dawson and everything. And what we saw in spring, I mean, he was really accurate. So with the arm strength and the mobility he has, they should be. I'd imagine Florida State would have something to say about that, but their wide receiver corps is not on the same level as Miami's right now. It's just not. They got a lot of talent, but it's not proven. After that, I don't think that you can say Louisville, they lost too much. Who would you put there? Drake May's gone from North Carolina. It's not like NC State is a great offensive unit. I mean, there really isn't anybody besides Florida State or Miami I'd put even in the category. So both of them should have great offensive lines. They got experienced quarterbacks and all that, but Miami's just better at receiver.
Yeah, and obviously then, and I'm not comparing the big picture because Florida State's defense has fewer question marks than Miami, and Florida
100%.
State is a more proven team than Miami's.
100%.
I'm not saying Miami's better than Florida State, but I'm saying Miami's offense looks better than Florida State's offense because you can say two experienced quarterbacks, but DJ Uiagalelei, and I talked about this with Spencer McLaughlin on Locked On ACC earlier today. Yeah, DJ maybe has a higher floor than a lot of the quarterbacks in the ACC, but doesn't have nearly as high of a ceiling as Cam Ward. If you're looking for a guy who can really make plays, I would take Cam Ward over DJU. In fact, their head-to-head matchup last year, Washington State versus Oregon State, was very much in Cam Ward's favor.
DJU just doesn't have big games like Cam does sometimes. He's probably a safer pick in a lot of ways, but I just don't think the ceiling is there. Cam just needs to stop fumbling. That's his one bugaboo that I'm sure that Dawson and everybody's working on him. Stay, a little more cognizant in the pocket, keep his hands on the ball, but more mobile, more accurate. And I don't know if anybody's got a bigger arm than DJU, but Cam's is quite really, explosive too. So I would take him. I don't think anybody would argue with that, but I think that game this year could be one that determines whether or not only who gets the ACC title game, but that could be a determining factor whether or not Miami gets a shot to play the playoff. I honestly think they have a shot at it. We've talked a little bit about defensive concerns and all that, but the offense should be so explosive that they can overcome that. So it ought to be a great game when we get there.
Yeah, I wrote about Miami's offensive additions at allhurricanes.com. Brian is my colleague there. I wrote about it yesterday. And if you think about like some of the players who have left versus some of the players who have come in, I mean, Tyler Van Dyke last year in 10 starts threw for about 1,000 yards less than Ward did, threw 12 interceptions to Ward's 7. Ward had 25 touchdowns to Van Dyke's 19 touchdowns last year. I don't think any sane person, there are a few insane people who I encounter from time to time. I don't think any sane person would say that Ward isn't an upgrade over Tyler Van Dyke. Damien Martinez, I don't know who you would compare. Miami lost a few running backs, but Henry Parrish, out of the guys who left. Fletcher's still at Miami. Parrish, out of the guys who left, was the most productive. 625 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. Martinez, 1,185 yards, 9 touchdowns last season. He's going to have a heavier workload at Miami than Parrish did, of course. But when you compare those stats, and then Sam Brown, if you compare him to Colby Young, who left. Now, Young, he seems like he's fitting well in at Georgia, so he might have an awesome year at UGA. But in Miami last year, had 563 receiving yards, whereas Brown had 815 receiving yards for Houston last year. So, like, you can argue that, yeah, obviously Miami's losing some players, but you've had a net gain on the guys you brought in.
Two things. Number one, I don't disagree with that point. And number two, I think the depth, it's one thing to be really good at your starting positions and pick what other side of the ball you want. But guys like Brown, he's not a lock to just come in and take all the reps. Isaiah Horton's good. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to compete for reps. And let's say Brown wins it. He still may only get 60% of the reps there. They're just deeper than just about anybody in college football at receiver, which when you and I were growing up, Miami at receiver, that was kind of like, duh, you didn't have to check the box. It was already colored in. They're not quite to that level yet, but they could be there this year. It's possible, especially since they have a proven passer that can move around and make big plays and extend the play. I think this could be a dynamic offense. You might see similar to the A&M game, especially the second half of that game. I remember being on the field for that. I felt bad for A&M's DBs at a certain point. Like, they just got annihilated. That was the one game that Tyler was truly dialed in, and they kept trying to play cover one against him. That's what you don't do. Miami killed them. I think they're going to be able to throw waves of receivers at teams. And when they rotate DBs and go into that second unit, Miami's going to kill people. That's going to be their biggest effectiveness. And now they also have, like, how many teams have Riley Williams as a potential quote unquote backup tight end? Like, I mean, I know him from his high school days. Everybody knew he was good, but like he can make a one-handed catch like nothing. So there are so many options for them in their personnel packages, running 12, running 13. They can do anything they want. They can just go out with 5 receivers and they can do whatever they want offensively. They haven't had that opportunity until now. So we'll see what Dawson can do with a quarterback and a full bevy of targets to throw to.
Yeah, and a big thing for me is, to be able to have a dangerous quarterback along with a legitimate featured running back, because Damien Martinez is among the very best in the country. So now it's like, what's the defensive approach when you play Miami? Like, do you stack the box to try and limit Martinez, but then Ward's going to kill you, or do you not stack the box and try to slow down Ward, and then Martinez is going to slice and dice you? This Shannon Dawson is going to be pretty spoiled next year, I believe, Brian, calling plays for Miami, because he's going to have a lot of options.
If you can't just rush 4 and drop 7 because you've got dudes up front, you're in trouble. That's kind of the way it is at all levels of football. Once you play good teams, you just got to be able to drop more guys. If you got to bring heat, and Miami's got a good O-line, obviously. If you got to bring heat consistently to get Ward off his spot, he's a really good deep ball thrower. Miami has, like, George should have, in my opinion, George should have more yards than Restrepo this year, even though he won't catch as many, because the long ball for him, he's going to be on the lead in ESPN Sports Center a couple times. He should be, because with his first step and his get off and all that, he is tremendous. And this is the right kind of quarterback for him. I think he's going to have a huge year.
Well, I want to talk from the present at quarterback. I want to talk about the future, because Luke Nickel, Miami Hurricanes 2025 committed quarterback, had the opportunity to impress people like Brian, who was there in person at Elite 11, Georgia over the weekend. Also want to talk about one of the top wide receivers in the class of 2025 who Miami is pursuing. So when we have the recruiting overlord with us, we got to talk some recruiting, and we're going to do that when we come back on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You guys want to keep it locked. Oh, and I know you're keeping it locked to Monopoly Go. Whether you're trolling your friends or you're working together with your friends, Monopoly Go is great. You can team up with your pals for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much to get, like cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. Go get off the bench, I should say. Go download it free now on Google Play or the App Store. It's game on with Monopoly Go. Oh, my friends, we are also so proudly brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the only ticket app that I use, and you will find out why. Not only can you find tickets to all the great events in your area, whether it be NBA, NHL playoff games, comedy shows, musical theater, all kinds of sporting events you didn't even realize you needed in your life. It's all there at Game Time. And folks, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all that great stuff. I love the all-in pricing. There are no surprise fees at checkout. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this recruiting overlord episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Brian, you were boots on the ground, Elite 11 this past weekend. You got to see some awesome quarterbacks, including Miami commit Luke Nickel. Was Luke awesome over the weekend?
He was up and down a little bit, but he got better as the day went on. One of the things that I love to do is see how kids react when their team's not doing good or they're not playing well. They have breaks and the kids go get Gatorade and stuff. And I'm standing over there talking to his dad, and I didn't even pay attention to Luke for a second. And he came by and he like brushed my shoulder. And I can't repeat what he said on the air, but he was not very happy with himself. And it's just,
man.
it was, he threw a couple just bad passes. It happens. And I was like, okay, well, let's see how he reacts to this. His dad and I are like, oh, wow. And he goes out there and he hits 2 or 3 money balls, like on corner throws, etc. If you don't come back after adversity, you're not going to be very good at the University of Miami. That I already know. Yeah. So I've seen him in other tournaments where he was just hot from start to finish. The Elite 11 puts you through a lot of mental strain, and they physically do that on top of putting you in spots where they try to challenge you mentally. How you throw it, like every little detail. It's not good enough to make the pass. It's how you make the pass, and they coach them hard. Some kids don't react very well to it. There were a few kids that kind of went off the deep end, especially some of the younger guys there. Most of the guys that are rising seniors did pretty good with it, but he got better as the day went on, and I was really surprised at how mobile he was, rolling to his left as a right-handed guy and throwing the football accurately. It's the hardest pass for a right-handed quarterback. He's one of the best I've seen at it this year. And I think, again, just like I've said many times, Miami's got a really good quarterback in the class of 25.
I think about the future for Miami at quarterback, because we know Cam Ward's going to be at Miami 1 year. So 2025, obviously you can try to predict who's going to be competing, but you don't know if anyone's going to transfer. You don't know if Miami's going to try to get another guy out of the transfer portal, but you just assume who's going to be around to compete the following season. Reese Poffenbarger, Emory Williams, who does have a couple of starts at Miami under his belt. Poffenbarger, of course, 2-year starter at Albany. Judd Anderson, who's at Miami now, is an early enrollee, true freshman. And then Luke. Obviously, you'd say not really expecting Luke to be the guy who necessarily rises to the occasion his first season. But do you think maybe by 2026, is he the type of player who might be ready as a redshirt freshman to potentially take the reins?
It's possible. I prefer guys being at least 3 years removed from high school to play quarterback.
Yeah.
For Miami's sake, I hope it's not Luke, because that means somebody else probably didn't get it done. But
right,
I don't know if you could ever really look at this other than you're always looking in the portal to try to take that 1-year guy. There's always that chance, unless somebody has a spring like his next year. Like I assume he'll enroll early. If he just kills it this next spring, they may look at the portal a year from now as they get ready to go into the season a little differently and not really pursue it and let him try to challenge for that as a redshirt freshman. It's possible, but he's a little bit different mentally in terms of his makeup and how he reads the field post-snap. Most kids struggle with that, and it's the difference between guys playing in the NFL and not. It's by far the number one category. Yeah. And you can't really grade it very often at the high school level because they're not challenged the same. And most of the kids they play with, they're not able to do it. So you got to wait. And it's why there's so many busts. I think that he will be one of the kids that can make post-snap reads. And that changes the game for him. Does he have the same arm strength as somebody like Cam Ward? No. But at the same time, he's more mobile than people know. Very competitive, very accurate. And he's only going to get stronger. Luke's body is going to change. He's 214 right now. He's going to drop about 5 pounds before the season starts, play at 208, 210, somewhere in that range. And he will be a guy that'll end up probably closer to 220, and he's going to look totally different. His arm strength is going to go up. There's just no reason to believe he won't be the starting quarterback at Miami at some point. Just don't know exactly when because of the transfer portal.
There's been an update, shifting gears here to a player who isn't committed to Miami, but we hope Miami's got a shot here. But a lot of teams are in it for 5-star wide receiver Jaime Ffrench out of Mandarin High School in Jacksonville. And I bring up Ffrench because there's been an update from 24/7 Sports saying that Ffrench he's down to 5 schools, that wherever he commits to, it's going to be one of these 5 between Miami, LSU, Texas, Ohio State, and Tennessee. And I know he's got a former teammate in Derek Plaz who's on Miami right now, who's recruiting him pretty hard, Brian. I've never been one to be like too bullish on proclaiming Ffrench to Miami. Like I haven't dropped any Donno balls or anything. I don't. But where do you think Miami stands compared to those other heavy hitters I mentioned?
I think this is a race where Ohio State's the front runner because they just do so well with the receivers.
Oh yeah.
But like Miami's had him on campus multiple times this spring, and they're in the mix. We won't know on him until the fall, but Miami's been on him forever. So I wouldn't count them out. I don't think right now Jamie knows the answer to it, though. Ohio State's just a shiny object because of how well they do with receivers in the draft. That's what attracts kids there. It just is. And I understand that. So there's a long way to go. Let's see if Ohio State has a good season. Let's see what Miami's season is, and we'll reconvene. But Miami's definitely in the mix for Jaime Ffrench right now.
I like to hear it. We're always in the mix when we have Brian Smith on the show. You can follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. You can check out his recruiting analysis all over the Locked On Podcast Network. He does a fantastic job, and you can read his work at allhurricanes.com. You can find my work there as well. Brian, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Good insight as always. We'll talk to everyone again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.